Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and tonight I'm going to be reviewing to you Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland for the Game Boy Advance, although the footage you're seeing right here is from the Wii U Virtual Console version because I currently don't have any way to record Game Boy Advance footage at the moment. So this is a flat-out remake of Kirby's Adventure, which originally released for the NES. I reviewed that game based on how it was in the Kirby's Dream Collection pack for the Wii, and I didn't have too many nice things to say about it, although I did at least admit that it looked nice for an NES game, and it had a really cool ending, which, to say that for an NES game is pretty darn rare, so I recommended buying the game for the finale alone. However, I'm here to ask myself the question, do my opinions still stand, and would I still give that rating now that I'm going to be reviewing the remake? So for starters, I'm sure it's pretty obvious, but this looks leagues better than its NES original. There are much more detailed backgrounds now, and everything feels a lot smoother and less pixelated. However, you might be surprised to notice that most of the animations that you're seeing are plucked directly from the original. Yes, the NES really was capable of quite a lot of advanced movement techniques and animations in the original Kirby's Adventure, and so the dance that you see Kirby do as a victory pose and a lot of the copy ability animations are ripped straight from that game, for better or for worse. One of the biggest problems I had with this game was, as you probably all know, I really loved Kirby Superstar and its DS remake Kirby Superstar Ultra. And while the console Kirby games, as well as their 3DS counterparts, did a great job of recapturing some of what made Superstar so amazing, this game, for some odd reason, didn't feel like doing that. Now, granted, the GBA remake came out after Superstar, so they could have very easily tweaked the enemies so that they had the mechanics from that masterpiece in place, but they didn't. Instead, they mostly just reskinned the graphics, tuned up the music a bit to make it sound more like a Game Boy Advance game, but kept the mechanics largely unchanged. Sure, Kirby gets a couple of new hats to make him look snazzy when he has a copy ability, but other than that, you don't get the advanced techniques that made Superstar, Return to Dreamland, Triple Deluxe, etc. so much fun to play. Instead, you get just the bare minimum of abilities. When you get fire, all you can do is just breathe it forward. The sword is the only one that even remotely has different abilities, but even that's nowhere near as fun to play with as Superstar, because all the enemies go down in one hit. Heck, some enemies can be defeated just by running into them, at the cost of a life point, of course. This game, as you might have imagined, is kind of on the easy side, like a lot. There were only a few instances where I died, most of which were because I was careless. The game's challenge is very few and far between. Only near the very end does it even get slightly taxing, but even then, perseverance will get you through no problem. So, if you haven't watched my original Kirby's Adventure review, basically this is a pretty substandard Kirby adventure. You just go from world to world trying to collect the broken pieces of the Star Rod to bring back the dreams. Because, yeah, I'm pretty sure there are nightmares in there, too. Maybe that's why they called it Nightmare in Dreamland. It's a pretty ridiculous plot, but it has a very amazing ending. So, while I think the ending is definitely just as good as it was on the NES, it wasn't exactly better, either. This remake is kind of sort of there for its own sake, as opposed to being, like, the definitive version of Kirby's Adventure. There are definitely perks I can see to this game, like the controls are a lot better. You don't need to press up on the control stick, or the control pad if you're playing it on the original, in order to make Kirby jump, but on the other hand, it's still an option, which sounds like a good thing on paper, but in reality it makes going through the doors to progress Kirby to another area to be much more painful than it should, especially if you have the parasol copy ability. Because the parasol automatically makes Kirby float down, so when I tried to press up to enter a door, it would cause me to just jump, and I'd be like, I don't want to jump, I want to go through the door. There are also some mini games to play, but I'm not going to go too much in depth on the mini games because, I mean, what's a Kirby game without mini games? They're really simple, easy to play, not really too much complaints, but they're also over with so quickly that you're going to get bored of them after a few tries. Now you can play this multiplayer, but unfortunately the Wii U Virtual Console version strips out all aspects of the multiplayer mode, so I didn't get a chance to test out any of those features. But I do think that's a welcome addition, as the original game could get pretty darn boring. Most of the levels, you could just fly over everything, thus eliminating half the challenge this game already has when it desperately needs more. Thankfully, it seems to have learned from the mistakes of, say, Dreamland and Dreamland 2, because most of the levels take place in much more cramped confines. Still, there were quite a few levels that I was able to breeze my way through, and while easy difficulty isn't always a deal breaker, heck, I'm playing Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn right now, which is even easier than this, and yet I still really like that game. But this, it's just so bland and uninspired. Nothing seems to pop out. The level design is about as generic as it can get, and with the exception of the finale, it just doesn't seem like too much thought was put into this. They didn't take the time to meticulously craft a full-on remake that took advantage of all of the extra features of future Kirby games, but instead was content to just touch up the graphics, the controls, and the music, and in a sense call it a day. Now I know that's not the full list of all the changes they made. Exoparadigm Gamer did an amazing video where he put the original and the remake side by side and compared exactly what went better, what went worse, and so I highly recommend you check out his video if you are okay with overt amounts of profanity that he tends to use. He did a much better job than I did. Also, the Wii Viewer gave a hilarious review of the original Kirby's Adventure on his channel. You know how much I love his videos, so I would highly recommend you check that one out as well if you thought that mine was a bit too pessimistic. Trust me, you haven't seen anything yet if you go watch his video. He has even less nice things to say than I do. Overall, this game isn't, like, terrible by any means. I mean, it's playable, and the controls are simple enough that a newbie gamer could easily grasp it, but overall it's just so bland. Like, if you go to any of the other Kirby games in the future, or Superstar, you're going to have a much better time. And for those of you that are saying, Paul, will you shut up? Not everyone likes Superstar as much as you do. Well, apparently Nintendo believes that that's the case, because Return to Dreamland, Triple Deluxe, Planet Robot, and Star Allies have all followed that game's formula. And any game that hasn't followed that game's formula was mostly kind of just forgotten about in the grand scheme of things, except by the most hardcore of Kirby fans, like Ant Dude. So I say, if you don't have an option to play the original Kirby's Adventure, which is available in many, many different forms, and also probably cheaper, I'd still say try that game out for its cool ending. This version, I'd say probably isn't worth the extra money, because there's just not enough new and definitive here to make it worth a second purchase, and not enough to even warrant a first purchase if you can get the original on Virtual Console, Nintendo Switch Online, with an SP edition to boot, 3D Classics, Kirby's Dream Collection, you name it. There are more than enough cost-efficient options for this game elsewhere, so I highly recommend you get that and just check out this GBA remake only if you're curious of how they could make the textures look better. Other than that, you're probably safe to skip this. With that, thank you very much for watching. Please leave something in the comments if there's anything I forgot or if you have questions. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and don't eat as much as Kirby or, well, that'll turn out badly. Bye.